I'm going to introduce the next speaker now. 7 years ago, I met a young man, and I saw a lot of potential and talent in him. I plucked him out of obscurity, and today I'm very proud of what he's accomplished. Today he's going to tell you a little bit about that. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Ramsey from Apples and Arrows.
In January 2005, Michael Brown, the director of FEMA, returned from Asia after seeing the devastation of the tsunami, and he convened a group of experts to talk about what would happen if a similar catastrophe happened in New Orleans. They got the brightest minds, the most intelligent people in the room, and they figured out that they were set. If a hurricane came, they would be fine. They made some assumptions, obviously, based on what had been true and what was true today. And their assumptions cost the lives of hundreds and thousands of people. Today, I want to talk about Apples and Arrows. We're a branding agency. We don't deal with FEMA. We don't deal with catastrophes. We don't do anything like that. We're a branding agency. We help companies figure out who they are and how to tell that story to their customers and celebrate that in really interesting and fun ways. We celebrated our 4th anniversary this January, so I think we're almost there. I think we're gonna make it. I think we're gonna be all right. And over those 4 years, we've had the opportunity to work with some really incredible organizations here in Wichita and around the country, and we're really proud of the work that we've done. But as we look to the future, we know that the model that we've established today is not sustainable. Advertising and marketing is an industry that is being challenged in a number of ways. One of the most obvious is the economy. We're the first thing to get cut whenever times get hard, which is, I'm a little biased, but that's really dumb, guys. Don't do that. You need marketing and advertising. The other thing that's happening is that there's a mass amateurization happening in our industry. Anybody with Photoshop is now a designer. Anyone who has the access to the internet can build a website for $200, and it's putting us out of business. You guys are killing us. There's websites called Fiverr where you can get a logo for $5. They're not good, but they're only $5, and so really, who cares, right? The other thing that's happening is that agents or companies are bringing their agencies in-house. They're saying, you know what, we've got the capabilities. We don't need to outsource this. We can just bring it in-house. So all of these things are conspiring against my business and my ability to pay my rent. And so as we look to the future, we know that something has to change. We can't just keep building brochures or websites or even great brands. We have to do something else. And I think what clients need is that they need leadership. They need strategic thinking, and they need to keep an eye on the future. So the new model that I want to share with you this morning is still really rough, and I think that's why I'm a little bit nervous about this presentation. Normally I present on things that I know and that I'm certain about, and this presentation is more, here's what I think we're gonna do, and I'm looking forward to getting your feedback and input. But what we're envisioning is that we're going to transition from an advertising agency to a multidisciplinary consultancy. And there's 3 components to this. The first is this idea called strategic foresight. My friend is getting his master's in a degree that I think sounds ridiculous called future studies. He told me he's getting this master's. I'm like, okay, so you're gonna become a psychic? And he said no, very gently, and said that future studies is really about asking some hard questions and challenging assumptions and planning with a bias to the future rather than a bias on what has been or what is true today. So strategic foresight is a discipline. It's a process. It's based in research and data. If any of you have had the opportunity to hear James Chung present, James Chung is a futurist. I don't know if he calls himself that. In fact, I think he doesn't, and he asked me not to do that. I apologize, James. If you're watching, I apologize. But he takes all of this vast amounts of data, he does interviews with people, he asks really hard questions, and he challenges assumptions. And he helps organizations figure out what is the future going to look like. And so we want one component, this would be the core of what Apples and Arrows would offer our clients, is this strategic foresight. What is the future that is coming? And how can we avoid getting crushed by it? Or how can we help shape it? So that's just one piece. It's a very important, critical piece. The next piece that we think is equally as critical is organizational development. So we're gonna figure out, what does that future look like? What are some of the key things we know to be true or we want to be true? And then how do we help your organization, your city, your nonprofit, your business structure? What are the processes and people we need to put in place so that you can help make this future a reality? Rather than just getting a really lovely 3-ring binder full of the future that may be coming, we want to help you build a plan for what is that going to look like and how is your organization going to get there. We don't want to leave you high and dry with just what the future looks like, or depress you with what the future is going to look like, and then not provide any assistance on how to build it or create it. The third piece, and the part that I'm obviously most excited about and a little biased towards, is the branding piece. Now, we know that companies that tell their story well know who they are, and there's incredible alignment between who they are internally and who they pretend to be externally. If we spend a lot of money and energy and time building this brand and the internal culture of an organization is completely out of alignment with that, everything we do falls apart. So one of my favorite examples of this comes from Visit Wichita, one of our largest accounts, and one that we're really proud of the work that we've done for them. We created a series of commercials, and all we did was point the camera at things happening in Wichita. That's all we did. And it was amazing the response that we got, because people said, wow, you made Wichita look really cool. But we didn't. Wichita is really cool. And all we did was point the camera at it. If we had tried to show that we had like a really intense professional sports game going on, or we were trying to get people to convince that we had like a downtown casino or something, which is ridiculous, we would never do that. But that would never happen. But if we tried to fake it, and then people came and experienced our product, all of those commercials would fall flat, right? But all we did was create alignment between who the city is and what story we were trying to tell. So the branding piece for this component is all about telling our customers, our employees, and our shareholders what the future is, how we're going to get there, and making sure that there's an incredible, meaningful story around that. So I'm out of time. Our goal is to help companies create the future and not get crushed by it. I don't really know how we're going to do that yet, so I'm excited to hear some questions so I can make it up as I go along.
Thank you, Todd. Wichita is cool. Do we have any questions?
You mentioned helping companies see the future, and you said you're going to help them create that. So most businesses, if they see the future, how are you going to help companies get from today to the future? Because it's going to be about economics and timing. First one through the wall is not always the winner. You can be too early on an idea as well, and then you can run out of capital and time.
Yeah, I think that really goes to the core of the organizational development piece. So we want to have the right expertise in the room. And just as a real quick brief aside, the whole model of Apples and Arrows is built on this idea of we're contractors, and we build teams depending upon what the client needs. And so a big piece of this organizational development slice of the service is helping bring the right people to the room to figure those questions out. I'm not that. I really am the branding guy, but I think that our goal would be to help answer those questions. And part of the futures process is figuring out the timing of this. So are we looking, and we're not looking 5 years out, we're not looking 10 years out. Some of these future plans that we'd be looking at would be 20 years out. And so as we think about, well, I'm going to use this as a transition, as we think about the companies that would work well for us, we're looking not just for like individual products, but large organizations, foundations, cities. We think universities are appropriate because we're not looking at necessarily bringing a product to market as much as how are we going to shape the future of what this thing looks like today. I did a really good job. Any questions?
Great job. Actually, beautiful artwork, and I'm in the branding field. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I'm very fortunate to have a career in making pretty pictures for a living, but I work for a think tank that's kind of doing a lot of this. And the cool thing about Clutch that I figured out very fast why it worked in a town I didn't think we could do this, and I'm passing this on because you're such a bright guy and you guys have such great work. Never limit the people that you bring in to act like they only work for you and are not individuals, because as soon as you kill their individuality, you kill their desire. The advantage of, I think maybe, and I've seen you do this, you've spoken to me and other people, if you can continue that, you will be able to save companies millions of dollars, but make them millions that they didn't know they could have made simply because the people you brought in actually knew what the hell they were talking about. They were able to do that one specific job and surround yourself with that and just organize it with the respect. if you could do one thing, he wants me to ask a question. You know what? I don't actually want to ask a question. I want to pass this on because I saw it work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I want to make millions of dollars. The answer is yes, I want to make $1 million. Millions of dollars.
I think that there's a bit of a chasm in Wichita and probably around the nation where there are business owners and businesses who have been in place a long time. And I think they are terrified of turning the reins over. And so they have a lot of branding that is 30 years old. Okay? So I think the challenge for a lot of these business owners is unless they adapt and change, which is going to be very hard for them, they are not going to look very compelling for the millennials or the X generation that's looking to move into entrepreneurship and maybe purchase the company. So the challenge they're going to have is that their multiple will not be what it needs to be or could be had they not engaged with you. So what is your game plan to bridge that chasm?
So that's a really good question, and I think one of the challenges we've identified, even in this initial stage, is this uncertainty about what it is that we'll actually be offering. And I don't know if anybody's going to ask that question. I hope you don't. I'm not emotionally prepared to answer that. But we know that part of convincing those organizations is having a track record of success. And that's one of the things that we're on the branding side, we can show that what we've done has actually improved bottom lines and revenues. When we look at this future stuff, we're really unsure about how we're going to convince people of the value because so many of the things that we're looking at are so far out. And so I'm not answering your question. I'm telling you that I don't know the answer. I don't know. I mean, when we think about some of these conservative business owners, I think that we're really going to struggle to sell it. And so even we do this at Apples and Arrows. I mean, we have to find the right partners who understand that the future is coming and that they can resist all they want, but it's going to come. And if we make the same assumptions that we make today, that today what's true today is going to be true tomorrow, then we're just going to get crushed. And we want to find the kind of companies and organizations who understand that and believe it. And we're going to start there. We're not going to try to convince anybody. Otherwise, we're going to start with those who already agree with us. We're going to preach to the choir.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
I really do have a question.
Okay.
So you're talking about expanding into two new strategic emphasis from the one that you have now and you have experience and expertise in. So how are you going to attract and retain the necessary people with those skills so that you can take this leap that you want to plan going forward? So
there's two other people that I'm in conversation with today. And so these two other guys, plus my team from Apples and Arrows, have had conversations about this company. And so our aim is to merge our expertises together. And it's not about my learning how to do these things as much as it is bringing those people to the table who have these expertise already. Then when it comes to building our network and building our kind of the broadening beyond just the three of us who will be kind of the core team or plus my team, that'll take time to attract that. One of the things that we are really good at Apples and Arrows is building a culture that people are drawn to and people want to be a part of. And so I feel confident that we'll be able to create a culture that is compelling and rewarding for people who have this expertise. Yeah.
Hey, Todd.
Hey.
So it sounds like you would benefit a lot from open data.
What?
Yeah. Just saying. So, yeah, is that something you've considered? I mean, I know you probably plan to hire some expertise for that kind of work, but yeah, where are you at in those conversations, I guess?
As we think about the types of clients that we look at, and we think of civic organizations and governments even, and governments less, mostly because I don't have the patience to work with governments, more like organizations like chambers or economic development groups. We think that we need access to every piece of data that we can get our hands on, and open data is just the lowest hanging fruit, most relevant, easiest to access. And so, yeah, we'll be in talks because I think we need it. I think we have to have it.
I have a two-part question. First, is this a new product that you're going to be offering through Apples and Arrows, or is this replacing all existing products? And second, how do you charge for this?
Okay, the first question, we don't know if this will be a new company or if this will be an extension of Apples and Arrows. We don't want there to be any confusion about what Apples and Arrows is or what Apples and Arrows does. We are a branding agency. That's the core of what we do. And we've built a fairly, I mean, we're still new, but we've built a pretty good brand around that. So we don't know if this will be an extension. It won't be a replacement. We'll continue to be a branding agency. But there may be a new company that forms to do this. To make money, we've got two ideas. Well, there's more than two. There's two that have kind of risen to the top. I think one is a flat project-based. You would pay us a lot of money, and we would come in and we would deliver this report, this plan, and this brand to you. So it'd be kind of a plug and play. Like, we wouldn't necessarily walk alongside you through that we would deliver this product to you, and then it would be up to your internal team to then implement. It would be very practical, and I promise it would not just be a 3-ring binder. And then the other piece is more of an ongoing consulting gig. So we would partner with you through the planning of the future, the organizational development side. You would have a coach, someone who would be accountable, you'd be accountable to, and then the branding would kind of walk alongside that as well. We're more drawn to the first model. Frankly, we think that that's a stronger model than the consulting model. But those are kind of the two that we've thought we can make money.
You may have tried to answer this, but I didn't. So have you really sat down and, I mean, it's easy when you say we want to work with companies that are futuristic and all that, that's one thing. But have you really sat down and profiled what your target market is?
We have, well, I'm not really a planner. That's harder for me to do. So yes, we have. That was I shouldn't have said that. I just really undermined my entire presentation by saying that. Yes, we have. As we've identified it, we think that universities are a really great model for us. The future of education is a big question, right? Like, who knows what that's going to look like? And as people, student debt, I mean, all the issues that surround that, we think universities are a great model. We think economic development groups are really great. You know, as we think about the work we've done here in Wichita, and we need to be thinking, we can't be thinking 5 years out, right? Like, we got to be thinking 20, 30 years. What is this future of Wichita going to look like? We think that's a good group. And then thanks to my friend Kenton, he gave me a great idea. We thought startups would be a great group for us to work with, but they typically aren't capital rich. But Kenton suggested we talk to the investors, and we partner with investors, and the investors pay for us to partner with their companies. And as part of their contingency of giving capital is to work with us to help them build their future plan and build their product. And so, thank you. I think that's the one, as much as I hate giving Kenton a big head, that's the one that I think we're the most excited about. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to partner, build relationships with investors and really get our claws in them so that they feel like we're a necessary part of their funding.
As you drop these big plans to these companies, do you have any ideas in place for kind of ongoing testing of these assumptions, especially these far future?
Yeah, I think that's the most necessary part that we haven't figured out how to monetize yet. We know that kind of a part of building our brand is tracking what we do and if what we're doing is working. We don't know how to monetize that, but yes, we think that a check-in, and maybe it's not even important to monetize it because it's just a cost of doing business, right? Like, we have to be checking in with them. But yes, we don't know how often. We don't know if that's quarterly or 6 months in the first year and then tapering off to kind of more annual reviews. But we think it's a necessary part, which is also the reason, like, dropping off the product makes us a little nervous, because we could drop off an incredible product, but if the company doesn't do their part to make it real, then we don't succeed. So we're still trying to figure that out.
Sorry.
Hey, Todd.
Hey, man.
I'm a game designer, and the best part about that is that we get to iterate often. Lots of times, no, let me rephrase that. Every time, the first thing that we try is not nearly as fun as the 5th or 10th or 12th. With Futurology, it seems like you get to present one binder, and then that's kind of your shot. How do you iterate to get to that one? You said it wasn't a binder, but the one plan.
Right.
How do you iterate to get to that one plan,
Right.
and then after that plan is handed to them, how do you make sure that their iterations of that plan succeed?
Yeah,
Or how
so-
do you try to help them do that?
Yeah, so the part of the futures process is rapid prototyping and iterating to figure out, okay, so based on these assumptions that we're making, what are the possibilities that come out of that? So that process is all about iterating and rapid prototyping. I don't actually, man, I'm a little insecure right now. I don't know, what would happen. So let's say we have I'm gonna make something up. There was an eyeglass guy, right? He presented here a couple weeks ago, and we partnered with him, and we figure out, all right, the future of retail eyewear is blank, and then 5 years from today, we actually find out that LASIK surgery is now free to all citizens of America. Thanks, Obama. What does that? What does that look like for us? And I think that's the part that we want to explore that. That would be one of the futures we explore, but we wouldn't anticipate that to be true. And so we don't have a good answer on, okay, so in 5 years, the plan that we had, the future's changed without our knowing. And I think that's kind of where the more the consulting ongoing, we're engaged with a company still makes more sense, because we can navigate and move through that. But then most of the rapid prototyping and iterating happens during the futures process. And so by the time we deliver the plan, we kind of have the most fun game that we could, to use your analogy.
Mr. Ramsey over here.
Oh, hey.
Hey, man. So you're talking about a lot about the what of marketing, and then a little bit on the how. So the what is your strategic plan that you're dropping off. A lot of these companies, I imagine, are going to have marketing staff, but they may not know how to execute on your plan, and they can't necessarily afford to bring you now in to do all that execution. So do you have kind of a model in mind to address that? How do you get them trained? How do you make sure that execution happens, and the resources to not necessarily do it for them, but perhaps train them? Is there something out there like that?
Yeah, so we don't, that's kind of true of our current business today too. Sometimes we get hired just to develop a brand and a marketing plan, and then they have an in-house marketing team that's going to execute it. And so what we try to do is, one of the pieces of strategic planning is looking at the resources. And if we know that your in-house team doesn't have the skills or capabilities to do something, it'll never make it to the final recommendation, because that's doing you a disservice, right? So I don't know that we'll train, but part of our plan will be, all right, here are the things you need to do to equip yourself, or the expertise or capabilities you need to bring in-house. That would also be part of the organizational development piece. If we feel like that was a really critical, if branding's the most critical piece of that future, then you're gonna need to bring this expertise in-house, and that'll be part of our organizational development plan. We don't really wanna be a training, we don't wanna be a training organization, but we would definitely we'd make that part of our recommendation to get that training.
Thanks, Todd. What as a community can we do to help you?
All right, so we are clearly, we have everything figured out at this point. No, as we think about it, we're about 6 to 10 months away from having a working prototype of a product, of what the process would look like, of what the end deliverable would be. And we would really love a pilot program. We would love to work with a nonprofit, with an organization, with someone who is willing to let us mess around with them a little bit, not in a weird way, and try this out. We want to try it and see kind of what happens. It's kind of like a beta test. And so we'd be looking for an organization who is open, who is willing and ready to give very clear, direct feedback, and someone who maybe has a product or service that we can't screw up that badly. I didn't mean that last part. But that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a pilot program for free. This would be a free deal. Free. Espresso to go. Got it. All right, we got one. We're done. Thank you, guys.